Alright folks, welcome back. So as you can see, I've gotten rid of the mirror behind me because it was distracting me all the time when I was recording, and it messed around with the lighting. And plus, mirrors reflect the moon. Mirrors represent the moon. And why would you want the moon in your life? I mean, try to get as many lunar influences out of your life as possible. I'm telling you, do not have anything to do with the moon. Get it out of your life. In fact, I might have to repaint this room. It's too white. Change it to a nice kind of solar color like red or orange or yellow. But yeah, we've got a little bit of solar here. We've got the lion rampant, the proud standard of Scotland, which is much better and much more befitting of this channel. I mean, folks, believe me, you want to get the moon out and you want to bring the sun in. Bring in the solar influence. It'll be so much better for you. It'll be so much healthier. But getting a bit sidetracked here. So in the last video, we were going through Wallace's great victory at the Battle of Loudon Hill, where 50 men under his command, many of whom were just basically his immediate family members, like Adam Wallace, Edward Little, Cleland, things like that. He defeated the superior English force of Fenwick and 180 of England's finest. So in this video, we talk about the aftermath, what happened after that. So this is the chapter Wallace is declared an outlaw. Wallace and his band lived in the Clyde Wood for the next 20 days. His enemies knew nothing of his whereabouts. If an Englishman chanced to pass through the woods, he forfeited his life. Wallace's fame spread over the land, and all Scotland had heard the tale of how he had cheated death at Ayr, a circumstance that caused great pain to the English. Oh, well, my heart just bleeds for them, oh, boo-hoo. Percy went to Glasgow to preside over a council meeting of the English lords. The lords arrived in Glasgow with many of their men-at-arms, totalling around 10,000 in number. Doesn't that seem like a bit of an overreaction? Wallace only had 50 men under his command, and they're gathering 10,000 to go after him. It's kind of like this documentary I saw, and I think it was The Art of War or something like that, where it talks about, like, initially during war, like, you underestimate the enemy, and then you fight a battle and you get your ass kicked, and then you overestimate them after that. I mean, talk about case in point. 10,000. Every noble refused the task of leading an assault upon Wallace. Percy addressed the lords, seeking the best solution for dealing with him. Sir Aymer Valance, a traitorous Scot who dwelt in the village of Bothwell in Lanarkshire, offered a suggestion. Lord Percy, my advice is that you seek a peace with Wallace without delay. That would buy us time to send for help from King Edward. If you do not do this, you may not escape harm from Wallace in the immediate future. So again, this whole thing of looking to Daddy, looking to, the king, looking to the father figure, I guess. Like, I don't want to have it. I don't want, no, not me. Don't look at me. Not me. He'll take care of it. No, him. Let's ask Dad. Daddy? What would you do? It's kind of pathetic, actually, when you think about it. I mean, Wallace only has 50 men. He could go in there any time and take him and capture him or kill him. You got 10,000 men. But, it's unbelievable. It's like George Washington at the Battle of Valley Forge, or the camp at Valley Forge. Like, the British could just go at any point and take them down and just destroy them, but they won't, because they hesitate. When they shouldn't hesitate, they just go out and do it. But, whatever. Wallace is a terrible man, Percy returned anxiously. He will not hear of a truce, but may do much before he stops. He believes it is not a sin to kill any Englishman who dwells in Scotland. Offer him a truce while we make our own plans for him, advised Valance. I know he will sacrifice much for his family. If one of his own can sway him, he will hold to a truce. His uncle, Sir Ranald Crawford, may convince him it is a wiser course. We can threaten Sir Ranald with the loss of his lands if he does not assist us in this enterprise. And, how did it take so long for someone to come up with this suggestion? This is so obvious. This would have been the first thing I would have thought of. This wouldn't have been after Wallace has escaped, after Wallace has won a battle, after Wallace is starting to gather support. Finally, they just think of this now? Is it any wonder the English lose this war? Is it any wonder? It's a Scot who has to say this, who has to point this out. It's not a mystery to me how England manages to lose this war. I mean, really, a Scot who's on the English side has to be the one who's think of this, to suggest this. This should have been the first thing they thought of. But, you know. Sir Ranald was brought before the council and was commanded to bring Wallace into peace. If he failed them, he would be made a prisoner and taken to London. Well done, England. You're finally starting to use your head. Well, it's not a good thing, but, you know. For them it is. You know, finally they're starting to, you know, use their brain cells for once. Wallace will not make peace on my behalf, Ranald objected. He does not forget that Englishmen killed his father and brother, and that he suffered greatly in the dungeon. Why then do you suppose he would do this for me, when he roams free as a bird, even should you threaten my life? I've got to think here that Ranald is bluffing, because he knows his nephew would do anything for him. But, you know, Ranald, bloody hell. But Crawford, he has to keep his cool here. You know, so I think he's kind of bluffing here. These worthy lords will soon send for the king, and he will finish this business, Valence warned the sheriff. Edward shall have Scotland's conquest, and Wallace will not save it. May our king get the brigands cease, even for gold or land, than should Wallace play the king. That's a bit of an odd sentence, isn't it? Is this bad grammar? I don't know. May our king get the brigands cease, even for gold or land, than Wallace should play the king. That's a weird way of phrasing it. Okay. Others whisper to Valence. Be quiet, Sir Aymer. You speak the truth to Sir Ranald, but you arm him with too much information. Footnote. Although English forces occupy Scotland at this time, they maintained Edward's pretends that Scotland was still a free country. I don't know how they're managing to do that, you know, when they've got armed soldiers in all the towns and castles and all these garrisons everywhere, but that would at least kind of halfway explain why they're letting the Scots walk around with weapons on them. But, you know. Edward may desire a wrongful conquest, but if we are not careful, it could be our heads that fall and not Wallace. As well as having a strong force at hand, he carries much luck. You have heard of his escape from Ayr. Percy addressed Sir Ranald. Sir Ranald, you shall go surety for a peace with Wallace for a period of 10 months, and you will show Wallace a letter given under my seal. I will put in writing a bond that Englishmen shall do him no harm, nor to any other Scot, as long as the bargain stands. Now, it's worth pointing out here, I looked into Henry Percy. He was 23 years old at this time. So he's like almost the same age as Wallace himself. Percy's still a young man. And Wallace, I think at this time, was about 21 years old. So these are two guys who are about the same age, almost. You know, so in previous videos, I gave Percy a lot of shit, you know, for making kind of foolish decisions and, you know, seeming not to care. But you do have to remember that he's quite inexperienced here. In fact, I read that Percy was knighted just on the eve of the Battle of Berwick. Well, really, the slaughter, the massacre at Berwick. King Edward I knighted him just before that happened. So that's very interesting. I mean, does Percy we know that he's quite an insightful man. We know that he doesn't have much military logic or wisdom. But is he kind of looking back at the massacre at the massacre at Berwick even, and like Dunbar, and is he kind of thinking to himself from that time, you know, this is all wrong, you know? It's quite interesting to think about that, because Percy might be carrying a lot of guilt on his shoulders. He might, you know, because he's not a lout, he's not a bully, he's not an idiot. Well, in most ways. I don't think he has much in the way of, like I said, military wisdom. But is he kind of looking at all the things that King Edward has done? Because remember, he's been knighted just before all these atrocities were committed against the Scots. And is he thinking, we're kind of asking for this? You know, you have to wonder if that's kind of subconsciously what's going on in his mind. I mean, one thing that really stands out about Henry Percy is he refused to go with King Edward II just prior to the Battle of Bannockburn. He was called up to go fight, and he said, nope, I'm not doing it. So that's quite insightful. Like, that shows his character. Like, I think he has a lot of foresight and a lot of insight and a lot of perception into a lot of situations. So Henry Percy is a very interesting character in my mind. I think he maybe feels a bit guilty about what's going on and realizes that, the English have kind of brought all this on themselves. But that's just speculation on my part. The treaty was drawn up. Percy affixed his seal and handed the document to the sheriff, meaning Sir Ranald. Sir Ranald knew it was useless to argue, but he took some consolation in knowing that Percy, although cruel in war, was honourable in peace and a man who kept his word. So that's a very insightful statement there. So you have to wonder, I really do wonder what Henry Percy's involvement was at the Battle of Dunbar and at the slaughter at Berwick upon Tweed, and like how much he had to do with that. But it is, Henry the Minstrel here is saying that, Percy was an honourable man. He's a man who keeps his promise. If he gives his word, he will keep it. But if he goes to war, he's going to go all out. So there's a lot of kind of parallels between Henry Percy and William Wallace. I mean, they're men who are of the same generation. They were born on different sides of the border, but there's a lot of parallels between Henry Percy and Wallace, I would say. A lot of similarities, even though neither would probably want to admit it. Sir Ranald set out the following morning to seek Wallace in the forest. Wallace's men recognised the sheriff and led him to their leader. He found his nephew sitting down to dinner and was invited to share a place at the table. Wallace called for the best cuts of meat to be served to his uncle. They dined on venison and other foods of the forest. As for wine, King Edward could not have served any better, and this is probably the provisions that they've taken off the baggage train that Fenwick was leading in the first place. And it's not the last time either that Scots will be sitting down to enjoy the king's wine. Let's just put it that way. When the meal was over, Sir Ranald showed him the document and told him what pressures they had been put on him at their council. What? Oh, bloody hell, this grammar is shocking. Let me read this again just in case you missed it. And told him what pressures they had been put on him at their council. They had been put on him? Honestly, if we want to save the schooling system, we're going to have to bring back the cane. Honestly, the cane. Grammar schools need to come back, man. We need to bring back the whip. I mean, you're not allowed to do that nowadays because of feelings and all this, but I don't know. I think one or two, What was that sentence again? Can you say it properly this time? Yeah, we need to bring that. We really need to bring back the whip, I'm telling you. This grammar is shocking! But anyway. Now said the sheriff, listen to my advice. Take this peace for a while, for if you do not, you will be guilty of a great sin. They say that if you refuse, they will declare war on your whole family, and many of your kin might be slain. Now, you'd have to think that Wallace was already thinking that. I mean, how would it not be crossing his mind that this would be a very, very real possibility? He's already had to leave Elderslie. He's already had to leave Rickerton just because, this thought has crossed his mind. And now Ranald is confirming it. So pretty interesting. Wallace addressed his trusted lieutenants. I will not agree to peace unless you wish me to. Boyd was the first to answer. I consent to peace. If we do not, Sir Ranald could be slain. Take peace for a while, even though it hurts to do so. So you see that Robert Boyd, he has his head screwed on right. Adam Wallace agreed with Boyd, as did Cleland. I mean, well, what else are they going to do at this point, They'll be stuck in the woods for 3 weeks. With their consent, Wallace agreed to a peace, which was intended to last for 10 months. Sir Ranald wrote to inform Lord Percy. It was the month of August when peace was accepted. Wallace and his friends disbanded. They prayed to God and St. John for protection until they met again. Boyd, Cleland and Adam Wallace went back to their homes. William rode to Sir Ranald's house in Crosby to lodge with his uncle in the meantime. After a period of a few weeks, Wallace became restless. How many times are we going to read this? And bad things happen when Wallace gets bored. Oh, shit. Sir Ranald was gone from the house on a particular day. Well, he's a sheriff. He can't be there all the time. He can't be home 24/7. So yeah, Sir Ranald was gone from the house on a particular day when Wallace, without his uncle there to dissuade him, decided he would go to Ayr. Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, the last two trips to Ayr were just rosy. I mean, they went brilliantly, didn't they? Fucking hell. He took with him 15 of his men. Wallace hid his face within his hood as he entered Ayr. That's not going to draw suspicion. A big man with a green cloak and a hood on, this is becoming kind of a regular thing. Surprised they even let him in. They came prepared for any trouble should it arise, because inevitably it will, Each man wore beneath his gown protective armour and weapons. Again, even after all this, even after the Battle of Loudon Hill, the English are still not checking people for weapons when they enter the town. This should be routine. This should be something they do all the time. But they're still not doing it. I mean, they're really asking for it. Honest to God. Near to the town gate, a cocksure English swordsman was performing an exhibition of sword skill. The man offered anyone who wished the chance to partake in an exhibition bout. Well, I don't think the word exhibition really translates to Wallace. Exhibition means you don't try to kill them. But, we're talking about Wallace here. So, of course, you know how this is going to go down, right? You don't need me to spell this out. Wallace stood watching, but so he actually does not engage. He's standing still. He's just watching. But the disdainful look on his countenance betrayed his emotions. That's one thing about Wallace. He can never hide his feelings. The sword player noticed this. His eyes rested on Wallace as he issued a challenge. How about you, Scott? Would you like to try to best me? I mean, this isn't even all that provocative by comparison. Maybe he's meaning it in a jocular way. I mean, there's nothing to say here that he's like being a dickhead, but maybe he's just kidding or joking. But I don't know. Would you like to try to best me? But that's the wrong thing to say to Wallace, because he's gonna try. I accept your challenge, Wallace replied curtly. Smite on, cried the Englishman. I defy you, Scott. With a single quick sharp blow, Wallace's sword connected with the top of the challenger's head. He followed up with blows to the hand and shoulder. The man was already dead by the time Wallace had rejoined his companions. Well, no kidding, his first shot went for the head? I shouldn't laugh, really, but, English women cried, our sword player is cruelly slain. And they're not wrong. Soldiers came running when they heard the cries. As was usual, the town was being policed on this day by a troop of English infantrymen. About 40 were on duty in the town, while another 100 were at the castle. Wallace met the foremost soldier and battle commenced. Soon his men were embroiled in the melee. Wallace led by example, making great room around him. His men soon overcame their less skilled opponents. A call to arms went up in a castle's yard, and the rest of the English force came streaming out, hurrying to the altercation. Wallace saw that the odds were too great and called on his men to make their escape. He fought a rearguard action to allow his men more time to depart. They ran to their horses. They ran to their horses, holding Wallace's mount in readiness. Their leader came sprinting forward, leapt into the saddle, and they were gone, riding into the Lag Lane Wood. 29 Englishmen were slain. The pursuing soldiers dared not encounter the Scots in the woodland environment, so they prudently withdrew back to Ayr, cursing the pact that had been made with Wallace. And honestly, I can't really blame them here, because Wallace is the one who has broken the pact. He did not have to fight this English sword player, even though he challenged Wallace, borderline provoked him. Wallace could have just said, no thank you, you carry on. We're talking about Wallace, so, never going to happen. Why even go to Ayr? Why do that? I mean, it's not like it's going to end well for you. I don't get Wallace, man. well, kind of do. He's 21 years old at this time. You know, he's hot-headed, he's youthful. You know, he doesn't have his uncle there to calm him down and talk him out of it. And Wallace has a massive chip on his shoulder. But, you know, how are things going to go from here? Percy even was sorely grieved that when his men gave their report of how Wallace had surprised him, 3 of Percy's own relatives had died in the fight. When he learned the cause of the altercation, he was angry and dismayed, blaming his own men for allowing the situation to arise. He wept, though few Scots knew of this. Well, I have to say here that, you know, none of his men were really at fault. None of the English soldiers provoked Wallace. It was an English sword player, an entertainer, one would imagine. You know, what were they meant to do after Wallace killed one of their own right in front of their face? Were they meant to just sit back and say, "Oh well, so too bad, so sad"? You know, Wallace was kind of provocative himself. He did not have to kill this guy, even if he engaged in a sword fight. You know, he could have just parried and, you know, blocked and all this sort of thing, you know. And the fact that 3 of Percy's own relatives, and he still doesn't take action. This is why I say he's not a good captain. He's not a good commander. He should be out there in the woods right now. Right fucking now. He should be out there looking for Wallace. Not sitting in the castle weeping and lamenting and feeling sorry for himself. But anyway. A message was sent to Sir Ranald, telling of the events and ordering him either to keep Wallace in check by keeping him away from Ayr, exactly, which he should have been doing in the first place, or face serious consequences. You know, I've made a video before about this, but like the English are pussyfooting around too much. They should be taking decisive action. It's kind of their own fault that they're not, you know, that they're sitting back and taking all this and, you know, not going after Wallace when they really should be. Percy knew that it was Wallace, but under the circumstances would stand by the terms of the truce, even though 29 of his men lie dead, including 3 of his own relatives. 3 of his own. Imagine it had been the other way around. That night, Wallace rode back to Crosby from Laglane Wood. The next morning, Wallace joined Sir Ranald, who showed him Lord Percy's letter. "Dear son, my whole intent was that you would promise, while the truce were in effect, to harm no Englishman, but to always remain at my side," said Sir Ranald. And he's been a lot more restrained than I would be. I'd go fucking apeshit at him. You know, but somehow Ranald is staying calm. I'd be fucking pissed if it was me. I've got to be honest with you. I'd be so fucking raging. But, you know. "Good sir, I cannot do that. I feel I have let you down, causing you so much grief. I will do no more while I remain in your household, and I will give you fair warning when it comes time for me to leave," replied Wallace. So he's a little bit cowed here. He's a little bit humbled that, you know, Ranald is expressing disappointment instead of anger. But, you know, Wallace kind of deserves an ass kicking here, to be honest with you. I mean, we've got all the laws nowadays that you can't beat your kids and all this, and I'm certainly not an advocate for violence against children, but, you know, sometimes when your family members step out of line, when your nephew or your son or whatever, or your brother steps out of line, sometimes they need a good ass kicking, you know. Sometimes the only way to get the message through is, you know, bring out the belt, you know. "Hang on, son, what was this I heard about you messing in the neighbour's yard the other day? What was it I heard about you going and picking a fight with Timmy's little brother the other day? Explain yourself. You know? Okay, so you disobeyed me, did you? Okay, hold out your hand. But, hold out your hand. But, hold out your hand. Are you going to do that again? Are you going to do that again? No. Go to your room. Sometimes we need to bring back the fucking belt. Just saying. Anyway, leave your thoughts and comments below.